Hi, it's Michelle Lisenberry Christensen. I want to talk to you today about setting new boundaries and helping other people catch up with changes you're making in your life. So often I'm helping people through this, either individually or in my group programs, because women come to me when they're ready to change how they relate to their own energy and ready to make some pretty dramatic transformations in their lives. And they're often fearful that other people won't be able to keep up, and they get some very real evidence that other people are upset by the changes they're making. They're used to one person showing up and now somebody new is showing up, and it's a change and it's upsetting. So the very first thing I want to say is you've got to come at this with some compassion, and that's going to give you the fuel for your patience. So understanding that you are pulling the rug out from under somebody. You've trained them to treat you a certain way and expect certain things from you. So giving them at least as much time and tenderness as you gave yourself before you made the change will be really helpful if you want to still have that relationship work once you've really consolidated the change and they've gotten used to it. So I use the word campaign when I think in terms of helping other people get on board with changes we're making or even changes we want them to make. Think in terms of your being able to see down the road a ways. Not having one conversation, but having several months worth of consistency on your part in a particular direction. So maybe it's that you have been the dry shoulder for a friend who comes to you mostly with needs. She doesn't have a whole lot to give you. She rehashes the same problems over and over and over. And what you've done in the past is listen and empathize and come up with solution after solution, and she doesn't take action on them, and you do the same thing again next week. And you want to change that because you're recognizing, gosh, that's draining to me, not very much fun, and it doesn't seem to be helping her either. So you can tell her, make it about you when you talk to her. Say, I've recognized something, that I've had a pattern of getting really embroiled in my own dramas and other people's dramas, and I notice it doesn't help anybody, and that I wind up exhausted. So I'm going to show up in a little bit different way, and I'm concerned that might be hard for you at first, but I also really believe it's going to be great for our friendship over the long term. How does that sound for you? And give her some room to have a reaction. So we're calling up one of the 12 elements of power here. It's called resilience. So we call up our room so that we can be just sort of an open space in which she can be reactive. If it's upsetting to her, if she feels abandoned or judged or any of that, you can make room for that. And to the extent that it's helpful or necessary, you can counter those things if it's simply not true. And once she's felt heard by you, she needs to hear some reassurance from you. You can give it, but really be patient. Come into these conversations in a very grounded way, and let the person know, I'm making a change here. Give them a message that you're prepared to repeat time and again, because any of us, when someone else around us changes, we take our time understanding that. You and I, when we're on the receiving end of change, are the same way. So it's not that the people around you are uniquely messed up and dense about the changes you're trying to make. They're just human. And as human brains, as human beings, our reptilian brains hate change and just want to maintain the status quo. So we start by thinking in terms of a campaign. We come to them with compassion, and we call up our resilience so that we can ride it out through their reactivity. Then be prepared to repeat and to positively change the subject or elevate the conversation. So another example is often that people are part of a group that tends to have a tone or a set of behaviors or habits that they no longer want to participate in, but they don't want to get cut off from the group. So you might bring it up like, hey, I've been thinking about what happens in my life, and, for example, maybe your friends, you all tend to drink a lot or gossip or do something else that you've decided isn't the highest frequency for you. So you might say, I notice that I create situations where this happens, and I'd like to create situations where we do something more inspiring. And I'm wondering if that's possible here. Could we spend our time lifting each other up instead of gossiping or just drinking wine together? So bring it up as a possibility and see how people react. And be prepared to bring that up a couple of different times. But the big thing here is to not establish a massive distance between you and other people. Oh, I'm this way, and my old friends are that way. sort of prejudging them and creating distance between you that may not be real. Really be gentle and patient. And one of the things that I find is that people who are on the cusp of a new change, the newbies in new territory, when we're new at something, that's when we tend to be most vehement about it. And so it's like when I first converted to vegetarianism, which now I eat. If it's 100% grass-fed beef or wild salmon, I do eat flesh products again in a much more conscious way than I did before I became a vegetarian. But I became vegetarian and I was militant, judgmental and strident and pretty unbearable. I think that often, particularly if you have a strong personality like mine, when you're new to a new way of thinking, that's when you're the most rigid around it. So really give yourself a lot of compassion, but also give the people around you quite a bit of mercy. If you can slow down, tone down, realize there's no emergency. You lived with the old way for a long time and you're ready for a new way, but you can gently bring along the people around you. And all of that said, there may be people who can't come along for the ride. And it takes a little while to know that, or perhaps in your gut you know that. So once you've ascertained, gosh, this relationship I don't think is going to survive the change in me, give yourself plenty of mercy around that. It's really okay. We don't do other people any favors by keeping them in our lives when the relationship no longer serves us. There are people for whom they're a better fit, honestly. You are not better than them. You're just in a different spot now. And so you're not some savior taking pity on them and maintaining a relationship, even though it doesn't serve you and it does serve them. The bottom line is, if it's not a match for you, it's not a match for them, even if they don't see that yet. So really make sure that you're still coming from a compassionate, grounded, level playing field kind of place. And then be willing to grieve it, We all have different things we need to grieve, but grieve the loss of the friendship, the hopes you had for the future together. You can grieve that, just bottom line, that things don't last. That's sad, and that's one of the kind of essential pains of life that often we try to avoid facing by keeping relationships and maintaining dozens of relationships that have worn out their usefulness to either person. So I'm all about fidelity and investing in the long term in people who are growing with you. But I also think that people often change and go separate directions, and it's really pretty healthy to release and bless one another on our paths so that we can all keep evolving. That's what the world needs us to do. So I hope that these tips have been helpful. I would love to hear how they land for you. I'm available at michelle@workingwithpower.com. Namaste.